everyone, Clawland here, and welcome to another episode of Left Hand Reviews. And today I'm going to take a look at a great little war game called Malta Besieged. Malta Besieged was released in 2011 by Victory Point Games and was designed by Steve Carey. If you know anything about Victory Point Games, you know that they are a budget producer, so their games generally come in bags instead of boxes. So that's why I'm just holding this one cover sheet here. Malta Besieged takes place during World War II and the Axis advance on Malta, and also a little bit of the North African campaign with Rommel. Malta Besieged is actually the 11th edition in their States of Siege series of games. So let's take a look at it. I'll show you the components, what goes into playing a game, and then I'll tell you what I think. So here's what comes in Malta Besieged. This is the size bag that this particular game comes in. I've noticed that Victory Point Games generally have the smaller bagged games, and then they have one that's about 11 or 8.5 by 11 sized. So this is about half that. Here's that cover sheet that I showed you before, and on the back it has some optional rules for the game. We just have a marketing insert here of some of their other games. This is the actual back of the bag. This is what you'll see on the back, including the number of players, the difficulty level, and so forth. You can see this has got a complexity level of 4, so it's a little on the low side. Since this is my first solitaire war game from Victory Point Games, I decided to start off with one a little bit on the simple side, and tells you a little bit about the game itself. A nice little thank you note from Victory Point Games. Here we have the convoy test sheet, and I'll go over this when we talk about convoy attacks. And that's double-sided. We have the rule book here. It's a full-color rule book. It's 8 pages or so. It's not stapled together or anything here, but it certainly gets the job done very well. There's plenty of illustrations, lots of good examples. And if you watch my Labyrinth review, you'll know that this is one of my favorite things that war games publishers are doing now, is including an example of play. And especially for a solitaire war game where you don't have somebody there to teach you, or someone that you can bounce ideas off of each other on how this rule is supposed to be interpreted, having an example of play I think is extremely, extremely helpful. So thanks VPG for doing that. Then you also have a whole bunch of cards here. These are all the action cards that drive the game. They're divided into 3 different epochs, and so I just have them pre-sorted out. And they're on actually a fairly thick, for a budget game at least, fairly thick card stock. They are square corners, so just be aware of that. And they're not really a standard size that you can put in your average card sleeve, so just keep that in mind. Now we also have several different counters and chits up here. These are relatively thick cardboard chits. This here is for the U-boats. I know it's hard to see. And then we have some round ones for various places on the board. And we have some fort tokens here. We have the ultra marker. Come with some tiddlywinks here that are used on that convoy sheet that I showed you previously. And finally, this teensy weensy, hysterically small micro die. So just to put that next to like a regular full-size die, you can see that thing is just tiny. But it's cute, I love it. But not particularly user-friendly, so I decided to use a full-size die. And now, of course, what you've all been waiting to see, we're going to take a look at the game board. So here is the map for Malta Besieged. As you can see, it's printed on an 11 by 17 inch card stock here, thick paper. So here we have the resources tracks. You have military, supply, and morale. And these are going to be moving up and down during the course of the game. There are cards that are going to move them around. You can take actions to move them and so forth. And I'll go over that when we get to the actions. Down here we have the draw pile and discard pile. So when you start each epoch, you're going to place that epoch's cards face down here. You're going to draw them and then discard them right next to it there. We have a holding box down here that's going to hold all the counters that are currently in play, but that are available to be used. On the bottom here, we have the Rommel situation track. This is going to come into play when Rommel attacks, which happens in epoch number 2. Then over here we have the convoy track. So your supply convoys will be attacked by the Axis fronts, and this is where you're going to track the number of hits that your convoys potentially can take. And then we have all the various Axis fronts that are all moving towards Malta. So the blue one here is for the U-boats. Then we have the Luftwaffe here. We have the Regia Marina, which is the Italian Navy, and we have the Regia Aeronautica, which is the Italian Air Force. Now, of course, Marco's going to make fun of me for horribly mispronouncing the Italian units, but you know, what can you do? And then down here in North Africa, we have the Regio Esercito, which is in the North African campaign, and this one is actually marching towards Alexandria and Cairo, while all the other ones are marching on Malta. We also have a raid box here, which you can use in Epoch 2. After Rommel comes into play, you can use it to raid the Axis supply lines. We have a Cunningham marker here, which kind of gives you a mulligan in certain instances of the game. The Ultra space here, which you can use for convoy escorts and some intelligence gathering. And then on the right side of the game board here, you have all the phases of the game, all the different actions you can take, and you have a key right up here of the different pieces of terrain and what it all means. So again, it may look a little bit busy, but it's extremely intuitive once you start playing. So let me just show you how the game works. It's very intuitive, very straightforward. So the first step in the sequence of play is the headline phase, and that just means you're going to take the top card of the draw pile, flip it over, and complete the event. This is Faith, Hope, and Charity. And on the top part here, it says Military. So first you are going to complete that military phase, and that just shows you which Axis fronts are going to move on this turn. And this shows Regia Aeronautica. So we're going to move the Regia Aeronautica front one space closer towards Malta. So it's on space 3, so it's going to move to space 2. Then we move down to resources right here, and this says resources none, meaning there's no modification to your resource pile here. And then we look at the orders, and we see there's going to be a -2 DRM to the Regia Marina and Regio Esercito, and a -1 DRM to morale. That's obviously dice roll modifier, and a +1 to military, and we get 1 action. So to show that, what I'm going to do is put a -2 DRM on the Navy, Italian Navy here, a -2 on the Esercito here in North Africa. So I'm just going to put 2 -1s on there to signify that. And we get a +1 on military. So we're going to put the +1 on the military there. Oh, and a -1 on morale. Simple as that. And now this card says that we get to complete 1 action. So we now decide how we want to use that action. Now, one thing I wanted to note for sure is that at the bottom of each card, it has historical background to this particular event. And that's really important to this game because it really feels like you're playing a narrative. So each time I draw a card, I like to read the event that's happening, and it's almost like you're playing out a movie. So what are the different actions you can take? Well, the first action you can take is to try to increase your resources. And all you do on that is you're going to roll a die, and you have to roll a die that is greater than the resource value on the card. So the military is always 4. So I need to roll a modified 5 or greater. And this gives me a +1 modifier. So if I roll this, rolled a 2, +1 is 3. That is not greater than 4, so that would be a failure. And then I just use my 1 action. If I did succeed, I would move it up 1. Now, why do you want to move these up? Well, the reason is if it goes all the way down, you take a nasty penalty. So, for example, if the military is at 0, you have no raids, so you can't do any raiding. And it says 1 attack or air support, meaning you're only allowed 1 attack action or an air support action on that turn. So that's really, really nasty. If you have a lot of fronts coming in on Malta and you need to attack and get them to retreat, if you have 0 military, then it only allows you to do 1. So it's important to keep these up. And of course, there's different negatives for supply and morale. And conversely, if you move it all the way up to the 5 space, you get a bonus action as well. So for example, if you move military all the way up to 5, you can flip this over and it says you receive 1 free raid action or fort reroll per turn. So that's really nice to have. And same with morale. When that moves all the way up to 5, you get a bonus. And actually, supply, as long as you're between 1 and 5, you always have a bonus. And the bonus is you can spend a supply to take an extra action that turn. So that's one of the actions you can take. The next action is attacking, and that is what you're going to do to try to push the Axis fronts back. And again, exactly like the resources, you're going to roll against the battle value here of the front that you're trying to retreat. So if I wanted to have Regia Aeronautica retreat, I'd roll a die, and if it's greater than a 2, which of course I rolled a nice 1, but if it's greater than a 2, you're just going to push this guy back to the next front, or to the next, the previous space. The next action you could take is fortifying. So you have various forts on the board. We have one here in Malta. There's one here in Tobruk, which will come into play later in the game. And there'll be one in El Alamein that will come in later as well. And what that means is basically when an Axis front is about to advance into the fort, you have to actually test to see if they're able to overtake the fort. And you roll a die. And if the die result is higher than the fort's battle value, then the Axis front succeeds in raiding the fort. So for example, if the Regia Aeronautica was here at 1 and I drew another card that told me to advance it, they would be advancing now into Malta. I'd roll a die. In this case, they roll a 3, which is greater than the fort's battle value of 2, so they would advance into Malta, and that's very, very bad. Now, so the action you could take to fortify that is to increase the fort's value of 2. And you start the game with the Malta Fort 3 and Fort 4 in the holding box, meaning you can roll a die, and if it is equal to this battle value, you get to increase the fortification level by 1. And this particular action you can only do once per turn, so you can't increase it to 3 and then increase it to 4 in the same turn. This is the one thing you can only do once per turn. The next action we can take here is the raid action. Raid only comes into play after Rommel arrives, which will be in the second epoch after we've gone through all the first epoch cards. And raiding, again, you're going to roll against the Axis convoy's battle value, which is of course 4 here. And if you successfully roll a 5 or higher, again modified because there may be some modifiers on this, then you're going to shift Rommel's situation to the right. And again, when Rommel comes into play, the Rommel situation marker is going to be on here, and it's going to be moving left and right. Raiding moves it to the right. Now, what the Rommel situation track does is helps you in attacking Rommel. So Rommel's not on the board yet, but he'll get there. And when you're attacking Rommel, you're going to apply this modifier. So it could be either positive or negative. And Rommel's really, really strong. You can see he actually has a battle value of 4 with the Africa Corps. So having positive Rommel situation modifiers is very, very essential. Also, when you attack Rommel, you're going to move the Rommel situation marker 1 to the left. Kind of the theme being that he's learning, your tactics, and he's getting very angry. So it makes it harder to attack him again. So you're going to have to be balancing out raiding to improve this, along with attacking him, which brings it down to prevent him from moving on to Alexandria or Cairo. Then the next action you can take is Ultra. Later in the game, there will be a card or cards that will tell you to bring the Ultra marker into play. So you're going to take it from out of play and stick it in the holding box. And if you choose to use Ultra, you will add it to the Ultra box here, and it will be set at active. And then, on a later turn, or even in that same turn if you so choose, you can use the Ultra action again to use the Ultra for one of its 2 benefits. You can either use it as a convoy escort, which will happen if there's a convoy battle this turn, or you can use it to try to gather intelligence. If you use it to gather intelligence, you get to flip over the top card on the deck and see what it is during this turn. So so you can plan for the next turn. And whenever you try to use Ultra, you're going to roll a die. And if you happen to roll a 1, then Ultra will fail. And the final action that you can take is air support. Again, that's another action that has to do with convoy battles. If there is a convoy battle, you can use air support to help reduce the damages that you take during a convoy battle. So you're going to take one of these blue tiddlywinks that I showed you earlier and place it on the associated convoy battle that you're going to be fighting on this space here, which puts it a -1 DRM for convoy air support. So after you completed the actions, then you move into the housekeeping phase, and that's really simple. If there was a convoy battle this turn and there were some hits, you're going to resolve the damages and losses that came from that convoy battle using this convoy battle sheet here. Then you're going to remove all of the various counters from the board and put everything back into the holding box and refresh the map. You'll determine if you have in fact won the game or have lost the game, and then you'll have to see if Tobruk down here has fallen. And then after all that's completed, assuming you haven't lost or won the game, you will start the turn again by flipping a new card. So let's just quick play through another couple cards here and you'll be able to see the flow of the game. So we applied all the effects for this first card here, and I still get one action. So let's say that I am going to attempt to improve my military since I have this nice +1 modifier. So I'm going to roll a die and try to get higher than a modified 4. I roll, I get a 5, +1 is 6, so I get to move this up 1. And in this game, kind of like Eclipse, if you roll a natural 1, it's an automatic miss. If you roll a natural 6, it's an automatic hit. So that's always nice. So that was my one action. I could choose to expend a supply to complete a second action and even another supply to complete a third, but I'm going to choose not to and keep that there. So it's now housekeeping phase. I didn't have any convoy, so don't worry about that. I check for victory or defeat, and there's no victory or defeat here. And now I refresh the map by pulling all these guys off here. So before I complete another couple turns here, it's probably important to know what the object of the game is. How do you win? Well, I can tell you this game has a couple different ways to victory and a couple different ways to defeat. And they are as follows. So if you manage to push all 5 axis fronts to their highest values, so all the ones here to the 5 value, or actually if you can move them beyond 5 and they just go back to the holding box, and if you manage to move the Africa Corps here back to 7, or again off into the holding box, then you immediately win with an overwhelming victory. This is very difficult. And the neat thing about the rules is it gives you some historical context to what constitutes that type of victory. So that's pretty neat. It kind of reminds me of a choose your own adventure type wording. And I'm kind of stealing that from Joel from Drive Thru Review. He just did a review of Nemo's War, which is another victory point game, and he described it as a kind of a choose your own adventure type game, and he's right. I mean, if that one feels like it, and this is too, so that's really neat. So sorry, I got off track there. So that's the first way to win, with an overwhelming victory. So the second way to win is if you are able to survive through all 49 event cards and you've pushed Rommel all the way back past Tripoli back into the holding box, then you have won a decisive victory. And then finally, the third way to win is if you survive through, again, all 49 cards and you at least control Tobruk, then you win a marginal victory. Tobruk is right here, and to control it means that the axis front is not to the right of it. So you have control of everything to the right of the axis front. The axis front has control of everything to the left, and where they are is contested. Losing, I can tell you from experience, is a lot easier. So if by any chance all Malta's resources are down to 0, then Malta starves and you are defeated. The second way to be defeated is if the Africa Corps moves into the Alexandria box and during the housekeeping phase he's still there, then you lose. Now remember, if he advances there during the event of the turn, you can still have a chance to push him back. But if during the housekeeping phase, when the victory defeat check is determined. If he's still there, you lose. And if any time during the turn he advances to Cairo, you immediately lose. So that's an immediate loss condition. You don't have to wait for the housekeeping phase. And finally, the third way that you can be defeated is if Malta is invaded. And what happens there is at the end of a turn, if there's any Axis fronts in Malta, you're going to complete an Operation Hercules check here. And if the Axis succeeds in the Operation Hercules check, then you immediately lose. Now, if you end the game and you didn't achieve any of the victory conditions and the Axis did not achieve any of the defeat conditions, then it is a draw. Alright, so anyway, now that you know how to lose and win, and most likely lose, let's play another couple turns. So let's flip over the next card here. And we see, alright, the first thing is military. We see the Luftwaffe is going to move forward. But the Luftwaffe is not in play yet. They're still off the board. And this card will tell you if you actually bring them in play. And this shows the Regia Aeronautica, so we're going to move that up to 1. Okay, resources, none. And then a -1 DRM to supply, a +1 DRM to military, and Regia Aeronautica, and I get 2 actions this turn. And you can read the historical context down here as well. So since the Aeronautica, the Air Force, Italian Air Force here is in East Sicily on box 1, which is, 1 away from Malta, I'm going to definitely try to push them back. So I'm going to roll a die. I roll a 2, add this for a 3, which just barely beats out their battle value, so I move them back to there. So now I have 1 more action I can take. So actually, I'm probably going to try to move him back a second time. And I again roll a 3, so we push him back to the 3 box. So now we've completed our actions. I'm going to choose not to expend a supply in order to perform more actions. So now we're going to check for victory and defeat. There is no case here. So now we just reset the board, pull off these DRM markers here, and we're ready for the next card. So we're going to flip this one over. And ooh, we see this one is a convoy battle. You can tell that because the text in the top is red, Operation XS, and it has this convoy battle logo. So the first thing you're going to do is move the Axis units. Again, this has the Luftwaffe in it, but the Luftwaffe is not in play yet. And then we have the Regia Marina. So we just move up their Regia Marina, Italian Navy. They move to 1. Now we do the convoy battle. Here's how it works. You flip over all the Axis fronts that are advancing towards Malta, which is basically all of them here except for North Africa. And we only have 2 in play right now because Luftwaffe is not in play yet and U-boats are not in play yet. So we flip them over and we have it on this convoy battle side. So you can see on the spaces there's dice symbols, or die symbols rather. And the closer you get to Malta, the more dice there are on here, and then you start getting the ones that have red dice. So again, another reason why you want to push these farther away from Malta. So what you do is for each one of the fronts, you're going to roll a die. So we're going to roll here first, and we roll the 3. 3 is not on here, so it is a miss to the convoy. So we flip that back over. Now we're going to roll for these guys here. We roll a 1. So again, that's another miss for the convoy. So we fared very well. But let's just assume that I rolled a 3. A 3 is on here, so the convoy is going to take 1 hit. So we move the convoy hits marker up 1. If we rolled one of the red die numbers, it's a critical hit, and we actually move up 2. So that's nasty. So let's assume we took a critical hit and moved it up to 2. Now we look at the rest of the card here. And it says no adjustment to resources. And we're going to get a -1 DRM for military. I'm going to take a +1 for the Navy here. And I get 2 actions. So I may try to push the Navy back here. So we'll roll. We roll a 1. So that fails. And let's try to push them back again. Roll a 4. So yes, finally we get to push them back. Now we've completed the turn, we go into the cleanup phase again, into that housekeeping. And the first part of the housekeeping phase, if you remember, is convoy arrival. So the convoy took 2 hits, but now that the convoy is arriving, we have to resolve it. So we can look and see this is card number 13. So we need to find the convoy attack here that's number 13. Here it is, Operation Excess. And we're going to roll on this sheet here for each one of the hits. So we pretended we had 2 hits, so I'm going to roll for the first hit. We roll a 6. So we look here at 13. A 6 is a hit because there's a 6 here. So we take one of our red tiddlywinks and stick it right there. And now we've just lost one of the 2 supply that the convoy is bringing, the Allied forces. So we move that down. Now we roll for the second one. And we roll a 2. Luckily, a 2 is no loss. So we succeed in getting 1 supply. All right, so we've just resolved this convoy. We've taken 1 hit, or 1 supply loss, but we still get 1 supply, so we move our supply of 1. Now, if you succeed in any supply getting to the Allied forces, you now get a singular bonus action with a +1 DRM to your morale, because everyone's happy that you got more supply. So now I can do any additional action that I want, and that includes the DRMs that are still on the board. So I don't have to use it for morale. I could use it for, for anything I want. Conversely, if after you apply your convoy hits, if the entire convoy goes down in flames, and in this case, if both were hit, then no supply is received, and you immediately take a 1 hit to a 1 loss to your morale because everyone's sad. There you go. I just basically explained to you the whole game. There's a few little things here and there in the rule book that you'll have to know about the Operation Hercules check and some of the other things that you can do. So you're going to go through all these cards, then you're going to shuffle up the second Epoch deck and start playing that, and then finally that third Epoch deck. And that's pretty much it. So let me tell you what I think. So if you couldn't tell during the explanation, I think Malta Besieged is an exceptional solitaire game. Now keep in mind, Victory Point Games is a budget manufacturer of board games. So you can get this game anywhere between $15, $25, $30, which in my opinion is a great deal. But remember, you're going to be paying for the experience and the excellent game mechanisms as opposed to high quality Fantasy Flight type components. So remember that when you purchase the game, I'd say I'd equate it to a print and play or slightly above print and play quality. So just keep that in mind. That's definitely not a bad thing, especially given the price that you're paying. And honestly, the game is so fun and so good, you totally overlook that. So I just want to get that out of the way. Like I said earlier, stealing the terminology from Joel, this feels like a choose-your-own-adventure game. Every time that you flip one of those cards, you're going to be reading the historical background on it, and it's like playing a narrative. Yes, there's a lot of dice chucking, and because it's a one-player game, there has to be some sort of AI, and that in single-player board games comes in as luck. Okay, so sometimes it's card-driven games, sometimes it's dice rolling. There is luck in solitaire games. That's how the AI works. And in this game, it is extremely heavy on the dice. So if that's something that can really upset you, then you're going to have some issues with this game. Now that being said, this, in my opinion, should be played as a narrative. Every time you flip that card, you read the historical background on it, and then you decide how the Allied forces are possibly going to push back the Axis forces from invading Malta and prevent Rommel from succeeding in his North African campaign, because historically this was an extremely difficult battle for the Allies in which they probably should not have won. So play this game as a narrative. It is not a hardcore strategy, chess type game. It's a fun storybook type game, and I really enjoy that aspect of it. There's not really much else negative I can tell you. It's a little bit fiddly because each turn you're going to be placing those +1, -1 markers all over the board. I guess you don't have to if you can remember and stare at the card, but it's a nice mnemonic to have them on there. But there's 49 cards, so you're going to be potentially putting 4, 5, or 6 different chits on the board 49 times, and then taking them back off during the housekeeping phase. So it's a little bit fiddly there, but again, that's a minor annoyance compared to just how much fun this game actually is. It is easy to pick up. It's easy to learn. If you don't have a lot of time, you can pick this up and play it. You can play it in anywhere from 45 to 60 minutes, sometimes maybe a little bit longer, especially when you're first learning the game, but you can really move through it quickly. And if you're like me and get utterly hosed by Rommel, you can have it done even shorter than that. So, again, if you haven't checked out Victory Point's games before, they really, really do a great job. And I would highly recommend that you check out Malta Besieged. It's an excellent game, and you're going to be seeing a lot of reviews of Victory Point games to come from me, because I'm just so impressed with this one. So, thanks for watching, and hope you check the game out.